We demystify what goes on behind the therapy room door. Join us on this voyage of discovery and co-creative conversations. This is the Therapy Show, Behind Closed Doors podcast, with Bob Cooke and Jacci Jones.
Welcome back to episode number 200. Bob, the sun, are you in front of a window? Because you seem to have gone all nice and bright. Has the sun just come out?
I've just come back from West Africa.
Oh, well, that might have something to do with that.
No, I've stayed static.
Well, but all of a sudden, it's like you've got a little halo around you.
Oh, lovely.
Anyway, episode 200.
Wow, I haven't got the champagne, but I wish I had.
I know. I think we've done really well.
Oh, I mean, Jack, you go back 4 years ago, I didn't think we'd get to 200. And I just think it's a marvelous achievement, a marvelous legacy for yourself and what you've contributed to the world of psychotherapy.
Oh, bless your heart.
Given me the opportunity to talk about some of my clinical thoughts over the years.
And share your wealth of knowledge, Bob.
Yes, I appreciate that.
You never cease to amaze me. So what we're going to be talking about in this session is there a minimum or maximum time limit for therapists to consider when working with clients?
Well,
I think that's a really good question.
An very apt podcast for the 200th one, because it's a bit of my hobby horse. This is. So it's please stop me if you think I'm preaching or something. But I have two centres, as you know, the Manchester Institute for Psychotherapy, which has about 15 therapists, and we've been going since I always lost when we started, 1987.
Wow.
And about 7 years ago, I took another building called the Manchester Institute Wellbeing Centre, both in Chorlton, with about another 10 therapists. So I often walk over to the Wellbeing Centre, and I spend a long time in Manchester in psychotherapy, even now. And I talk to lots of therapists, and this subject is very dear to my heart. Because when I hear therapists having a cup of tea in a wellbeing centre, or not just say centering on the wellbeing centre, or MIP, or whatever, conferences, if you like, and they talk, oh yes, I've been seeing 7, 8, 9 clients, almost like it's a wonderful thing. It shows that they've somehow, I don't know, doing very well in the clinical world, or making a lot of money, or they've become very experienced. And it frustrates me, because it's actually a sign, I think, of two things. One, not taking care of themselves.
Yeah.
Number two, the 8th, 9th, and 10th clients, or 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th clients at the end of that day, is getting a client who's not only probably tired,
Absolutely.
but
Yeah.
also they're carrying 6 or 7 clients' energies with them.
Yeah. So you're talking about how many clients a therapist sees in a day,
Maximum or minimum.
whether there's a minimum or a maximum, not necessarily amount of time, as in I'm going to see you for 3 months, but how many physically they're fitting into a day. Yeah.
I mean, the other one we can talk about in a bit longer, about how long we see clients, but we can concentrate on both. Podcast's got 2 dimensions, but in this bit, glad you've spelled it out, I'm talking about how many clients a person sees in a day.
Yeah, that's a ridiculous amount. Yeah.
Well, I hear it, Jackie. I hear people who, oh, I've got 6 or 7 today, or 8 or 9 today, as if it's something to be, I don't know, proud of or something. And I think it's a sign of not taking care of yourself and not thinking about what it's like for clients who are the 7th, 8th, and 9th.
Yeah.
To work with you.
I
think people listen to this may disagree.
Yeah, I think 6 was the most I saw when I was working in Manchester, because I was only in Manchester for 1 day. So it was like the practicalities of seeing everybody in the 1 day. But I didn't do it for long. The burnout, I could feel, like you said, at the end of the day, I wasn't compass mentors. They didn't get the same version that the first client got in a day. Absolutely.
No, and you see, therapists might start at 10 o'clock and
Yeah.
end at 6, or they might start at 10 o'clock and end at 8.
Yeah. Yeah.
Might start at 12 o'clock and then end at 8. So I think there needs to be at least an hour. And these are my personal thoughts. So not only could you disagree with me, but anybody listening or watching can disagree with me, and I'm quite open to discussion. I think there needs to be an hour, 60 minutes between clients.
Yeah. Sometimes that's impractical, but yeah.
Is it?
I think if you're hiring a room, do you know what I mean? And that's what a lot of people are thinking about, or that's how they practice is by hiring a room. And it's how many hours they've got that room for and how much it's costing them and yada, yada, yada. You know, when you're running a business, it becomes very business orientated, which isn't the way to be doing it. I'm not saying that's
If
how it,
you're going to rent a room, you're going to either rent it out by the day, so you have it from 8 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night, or you're going to rent it out half days. Now, at our institute, we don't do half days.
yeah,
And that could start at 8 o'clock in the morning and end at midday. Uh, you, there are some centres where it's by the hour, or they do blocks. Um, but mostly, I think it's places do it by the day or half days. And I still think, well, certainly if you're going to do a day and you've got an hour, if you've got from 8 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock at night, you certainly can space it out a bit, surely, can't you?
well, in an ideal world, yeah, absolutely. But again, it's the practicalities. Most people want it outside of working hours. So, do you know what I mean? Most people would come after 5 o'clock. So, I know for me, 5 o'clock, I used to have at least half an hour between clients. So, it'd be like 5 o'clock, 6:30, and then 8 o'clock, and then I'd finish at 9 o'clock at night. But those evening slots were really sought after.
Well, that's not my experience, but I hear it is your experience.
It
I,
was for
I
me.
do I do the assessments, all the mental health assessments of the institute. So in other words, we look at availability for the person and look at when they can come, XX, and the best clients for them, XXX. If you said I had an assessment today, here's perfect. I said, okay, it's an hour a week. It's the same time every week
Yeah.
when you like to come. Oh, well, okay, perhaps I could have gone after work. Oh, so you work 5 days a week? No, I will only work 3 days. What about coming then through the day when the days you've got
The
off?
other two. Yeah.
Or a
Yeah.
bit more time. If you go with what they want at the beginning,
Yes.
rather than in the assessment, say something like, well, is there any chance of flexibility? Because a lot of people work from home.
Yes. Yeah. Things have massively changed
Yeah.
since COVID.
So
Yeah.
it takes the person like me to inquire whether they could come during the day.
Yeah.
Jack, honestly, you would be astonished at how many people can actually come during the day if
Yeah.
they're given the chance. So I would say, I haven't done the research on this, but more people come during the day, morning and afternoon, or Saturdays than do in the evening when I match people up.
Yeah. Well, when I was seeing clients from home here, I was busy. It started at 9:30 in the morning, so I know that yeah, they do come during the day.
It's tend to be therapists, who tend to placate and work through the client's premium sort of slots, if you like. I
Yeah.
mean, you're
Yeah.
kind of a doctor.
Yeah.
You don't say to them, "Oh, well, I can only come at 6:30 in the evening," or
Yeah.
you make.
It's got to be a priority. Absolutely. Yeah.
I think there's too much of this pander going. Perhaps
Yeah.
people might be hearing this wrongly on a podcast, but I think there needs to be a discussion about when therapists can see people and could you come in the morning? Could you come in the afternoon? Could you come Saturday morning? Because it's quite a lot of therapists have their evening slots taken up, and
Yeah.
you'd be astonished at how many people make provision to come in the morning and the afternoon if you have that type of discussion.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying, I really don't want to hear that those premium slots don't go in the evening, but or stroke and you can also see a lot of people during the day.
Yeah. And I think, the point that you were bringing up, I think it is really valid that you've got to give yourself time in between clients. You've got to make sure you're hydrated and you've eaten and do you know what I mean? The basic things which for a lot of therapists, I think goes out the window.
They say, yeah, oh, I'll work through the lunch hour
Yeah.
just because the client has said I want to come in the lunch hour.
Yeah.
There's no sense of it's a business,
Yeah.
no sense of negotiation. It's like, oh, we'll just go with what the client wants, which is really frustrating to listen to when a
And
therapist.
it's not a very good way of modeling how things should be either. Do you know what I mean? If we're modeling about self-care and, self-love and all this sort of stuff, we've got to model that to our clients as well and take care of ourselves. I know, and I'm not going to name any names, but I know for a fact I've got a friend that's a therapist and she used to have an hour's kip between clients. She would literally hire the room and she would have a sleep on the couch for an hour in between clients and be as fresh as a daisy.
Yeah, I mean, I you know this. I know a lot of therapists, and but what from many different places. But I run supervision certificates, 5-day ones, and to be supervisors. So I have done for 25 years, and three lots of these diplomas. So I meet a lot of therapists from all over the place, from the NHS, from different organisations. And this subject, what I'm talking about now, is always discussed.
Yeah.
And people say, Bob, how can you have that view? How can you? I have a clinical load of 20 people coming to me by XXXs, or I couldn't possibly even take 10 minutes. And they go on and on. In organizations, I do know people have high clinical loads, and maybe it's a different picture. But even in organizations, I think you can fight for 15 minutes or 20 minutes between.
Yeah. I can't even begin to think about having 20 clients in a week. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
That's a lot of, yeah,
Well,
it's a big,
clinical psychologists might well have 60 clients a week, but of course, if you get a clinical psychologist, if you're looking over the NHS, their time would be no more than 20 minutes or half an hour.
yeah,
So if we're talking about private psychotherapy where psychotherapists give an hour of their time, then you wouldn't ever find a psychotherapist which has a clinical load of 60 people. Um, but 20, 25. So perhaps I'm being idealistic when I said an hour, but I would certainly say let's think about the model of therapists giving themselves some time between clients.
yeah. Yeah, and get out of the room. Don't stay in the same environment. Go for a quick walk around the block or make a cuppa
Yeah,
or
yeah,
sit in
all that.
whatever. Just clear
Yeah,
the space a little bit. Because I do think whether it's kind of like the spiritual side of me or whatever, I don't know. But I do think sometimes the energy in the room can get a bit stale if you see one client straight after the other after the other. You need to open the door, open the windows, and let things blow through a little bit.
energetically,
Yeah.
you need to change the energy, and I think that's very, very important. Otherwise, you can get all the negatively toxins and energies from people's psychological psyches, which build up and build up. So you
Yeah.
have, I think, clearing of energies at least.
Absolutely, and your own energy as well. Do you know what I mean? To lift it, if you, one of the things that we learned on training a while was the 80-20 rule as well about the type of clients that you were taking on. Do you know what I mean? That they
Yeah, that's
weren't,
important.
yeah,
Taking very, very disturbed clients who redefine a lot, discount a lot, uh,
yeah,
move away from reality. I think it's more challenging perhaps than people from the worried, well, or neurotic population. So I agree that comes into it. Another thing is if you look at trainees coming into psychotherapy training and you look at their profile, or in fact, just take a bunch of therapists, right? You will find out that their personality profile, unless they've done a lot of therapy or changed their own script, often comes from a compulsive caretaking position. In other words, a rescuing position.
Yeah.
And again, they tend to rescue clients in terms of what we're talking about here, and
Right.
availability and when they can come and all these sort of things, instead of an adult to adult negotiation.
Yeah. Which leads to burnout as a therapist.
Oh, that's the bit.
Yeah.
Is the bit. I was reading the other day, Independent or Guardian or somewhere, and they were talking about the average length of time a therapist's career lasts. And I was astonished, because I've had a 38, 39-year career as a psychotherapist. Um, but 11 years was the average.
Wow.
Social workers, probation workers, therapists, all this, and they took
I
all.
can't believe it. Do you know what I mean? Because if you're not you're taking care of yourself and you're not a priority, and I think that's one of the things that we're talking about here, is it does
Self-care.
take its toll. Absolutely. Yeah.
Self-care.
Yeah.
Not deferring or becoming a compulsive caretaker.
And we do take on bits of our clients. Do you know what I mean? I don't think you can work with somebody and not actually take on board some of what's going on for them.
Possible.
Yeah.
So at least for people listening to this, I give a plea for self-care.
Yeah.
Try and get at least 20 minutes between clients. Don't take more than, think how many clients you're taking on board. But something I do want to say, which you said right at the beginning, that the clients that get you in the morning when you're fresh
Yeah.
have a different Jackie than the 8 o'clock clients at night.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's an interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think for me, what I used to do was I wouldn't, if I was working from MIP in the low cost, there was only certain days or whatever, so I was quite restricted. But if I was having, clients until 8 or 9 o'clock at night, I wouldn't start until mid-afternoon. And if I was starting seeing them at maybe 8 o'clock in the morning, then I would finish at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Mm,
Do you know what I mean? So my days would be quite flexible in that respect as well.
mm. Yes, and I think so. How about the other dimension then, which you started to talk about, which is the other part of this podcast, which is maximum minimum time that an actual client works with a therapist.
Yeah.
That's what you were talking about when you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think it's a maximum or minimum, by the way. I think it's led by the client, and I think that I mean, I think if you're a long-term psychotherapist working like I used to do with clients for 5 or 6 years, it might come to a time where you would say, well, we've worked through all these aspects, and are we thinking about ending, or have you phrased it? So I
Yeah.
understand that. I think that's obviously the duty of a therapist to do that occasionally. However, I also think about contracts. So Eric Byrne would say, the originator of transaction analysis, if this question, he was in this podcast, he'd say, oh, when they've resolved their contracts.
Yeah.
Yeah, which
Which makes perfect
like
sense.
answer.
Yeah.
They've come because they're depressed. If they're not depressed anymore, they leave therapy. But what usually happens, of course, is as you start working one thing, it's like layers of the onion.
Yes.
Other
Yeah.
things come up. So
Yeah.
you end up recontracting and recontracting and recontracting. So I don't think there's a minimum or maximum. I think that people are listening to the podcast may disagree with me, and that's fine. But I will go with the client.
Yes. Yeah.
Uh, However, especially in the longer term, people don't really come to me for 6 or 8 sessions because I said I was a long-term developmental psychotherapist. So people would only come with me if they were going a year on or something. But if somebody only came for 6 or 8 sessions, I wouldn't not. Well, Jackie, towards the end of my career, I didn't take them on. I referred them on. But people who work in sort of brief social solution focused ways of 12 sessions or something, I
Yeah.
think they can still achieve a lot.
Absolutely, yeah. And if often if it's coming through private insurance, which some of us do see clients that there's a limit to how many sessions that are paid for. So they come knowing that they get 8 sessions paid for. Do you know what I mean? So sometimes there is a time limit on it.
And also, you can achieve a lot if you have a specificity of contract.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
you concentrate on one thing, not all the other things that appear,
Yes. Yeah.
because all the other things which will appear.
They're still there. Yeah. Yeah.
However, if they've only got 8, 10 sessions or something, you have to focus on the priority of the contract.
Yes.
I would be the world's worst short-term psychotherapist. I just would, because I would find it very hard to ignore all the length of the different levels of the onion and get back to one specific contract. But I know if somebody has only got 8 sessions or 10 sessions or 12 sessions, you need to concentrate high priority on the change they want
Yes.
and go with that rather than. See, I used to meander off to all the other layers under the onion, and so I have great admiration, real admiration for counselors and psychotherapists who work with clients for 8, 10, 12 sessions, because I think that's can often be a very challenging place. And as I say, I think they're fabulous.
Yeah. I don't think transactional analysis lends itself to working with clients short term, but I think with the NHS and CBT, often there is a length of time attached to them.
Mm,
So
mm.
again, it depends maybe on the type of therapy that you're having as to the length of time that it is.
Very good point. CBT, solution focused therapy, it lends itself. So does CAT, cognitive analytical therapy, to 17 sessions. So does ACT, accepted commitment therapy. They all lend themselves to a more, I think, shorter termed,
Yeah.
if you like. That's
Yeah.
a very good point. Most of the psychodynamic, and I put transaction analysis in that category, therapies, they lend themselves to far longer duration.
Yeah, and
Particularly with the
for
unconscious.
me, there's something about, the client comes with an issue, and like you said, there's so many layers around that. But then you can sort out or, delve into that issue, but then life will throw them a curveball and something else will happen. So does that mean we're starting from scratch again, or it's I've had clients that have been with me for years, but not consecutively. They've felt okay and robust and resilient enough to go out there, but then something's happened and they've got back in contact and they've
Yeah,
come back again for another 6 months or 12 months. And I had a lot of clients that did that.
yeah, you're sort of not starting afresh. I know what you're saying is, but they're all connected, these issues. And what's most important, that they've had a relationship with you.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Just joining the road at a different point.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. But I think it's lovely that you've got a history together. And
Oh,
do you know what I mean? You can kind of slot back in where you left off
yeah, that sense of
with a new
content.
contract. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so there's different dimensions of the podcast. As I said, the first dimension we talked about, minimum, maximum type of therapists, clients that therapists take and how long and everything else. They're my personal views. I know other therapists listening might have had a total viewpoint, which is from their frame of reference. But it's, I think, important and interesting to open the dialogue at least.
Mm, yeah. And I think, you touched on it quite shockingly that, institutes or, working for an employer, whether that's the NHS or a private hospital or whatever it is, the pressure on
Oh,
the therapist to meet the demand
high.
is hard. Yeah, absolutely. You know, it's like I was a foster carer, and you know, we used to talk about the workload that the social workers had. It wasn't doable. It wasn't sustainable, you know, and yet they were expected to do that on a daily basis.
Mm. Well, I've enjoyed this podcast. And before we end, do you remember, Jackie, the title of the first ever podcast we did?
I know the first one was a short one that was an introduction, but
Oh yeah,
off the top of my head, no, I don't remember. Why do you?
no. I just thought as we ended the
Shall I
200.
have a look and see whether
Yeah,
I
I
can
just wanted.
find
No,
it?
I'm not talking about the introduction about these podcasts about why we're doing them, things like that. I was thinking. I wonder if the first ever one, and I wonder if it was about contracts or it was what happens in the relationship. And I thought I don't actually know what the first one was. I wonder, if Jackie does, because we've done 2 years of them, which
Yeah, well,
four
we've got
years, 4 years.
200 episodes of them now, haven't we?
We've done 4 years, and I thought, oh, I don't really remember what the first one was.
I'm having a look as we speak.
But I guess it's going to be what is the first stages of a psychotherapy process, maybe. I don't have to know today, but and I also wondered at the same time how many of the listeners who are listening to the 200th one, or also listening to the first one, and if how many listeners stay with us and things.
That's it, yeah. Do you want to know what it was, Bob?
What was it then?
The first one was the introduction to the therapy show,
Yeah.
but the first full episode was why do people go to therapy?
Yeah, well, that should be that. Why didn't I think of that? That's the obvious one to start with.
And then how do you choose the right therapist?
These are the obvious ones, they're right at the beginning, aren't they?
So if you've only recently come across us, go back right to the very beginning and listen to these ones.
They're interesting. Of course, we look very different, don't we? I mean, I looked 4 years ago. Well, why I probably was as ugly handsome as I was 4 years ago. I don't know.
You've not changed one iota, Bob.
But I've enjoyed these 200s, and I want to thank you for the opportunity.
So what we'll be talking about next time is contracting always a must in the therapy room, which is contracting is something we've spoken about an awful lot.
Oh, do you want to do another one then? I don't know.
It's up to you.
What other titles have I given
We've got important skills for building rapport in the therapy room.
Oh, well, let's definitely do that. And what's the second one?
What are we actually doing in the therapy room as therapists and clients? That's a good one. What are we doing, Bob?
Do that. Do those two.
Okie doke. Right. Until next time, Bob. Thank you so much.
Yeah, lovely. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.
You've been listening to The Therapy Show, Behind Closed Doors podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. We'll be back next week with another episode.